You know, there's something absolutely fascinating that happens when you begin to wake up spiritually, and nobody really prepares you for it. You start to notice that certain people become inexplicably uncomfortable around, not because you've done anything wrong, not because you've changed your behavior in any obvious way, but simply because your presence has shifted. You walk into a room and you can feel it, this subtle tension, this strange resistance, this odd defensiveness that arises in others for no apparent reason. And we've been told, haven't we, that spiritual awakening will make us more likable, more peaceful, more universally accepted. But what if I told you something quite different? What if I suggested that the more awake you become, the more you will actually irritate, disturb, and threaten the egos of nearly everyone around you, often without saying a single word? If this resonates with your experience, please give this video a thumbs up and share what you've noticed in the comments below. Your observations matter, and others need to know they're not imagining this. And if you want more insights into the reality of spiritual awakening, subscribe to this channel. Now, this isn't some paranoid fantasy or spiritual superiority complex. This is a very real psychological phenomenon, and understanding it might just save your sanity as you navigate this path. You see, the ego is essentially a constructed identity, a carefully built fortress of beliefs about who we are, how the world works, and what gives life meaning. And this fortress requires constant maintenance, constant reinforcement, constant validation from the external world. Everyone around you is unconsciously engaged in a mutual agreement to support each other's ego structure. You validate my identity, I validate yours. You believe my story, I believe your story. You don't question my mark, I don't question yours. It's a delicate ecosystem of mutual self-deception, and it functions beautifully so long as everyone participates. But then you wake up, and suddenly, simply by virtue of your presence, you've stopped participating in this agreement. You're no longer feeding the system. You're no longer playing the game. And the ego in others can sense this immediately, the way an animal senses a predator. They may not consciously understand what's happening, but something deep within them recognizes that you've become dangerous to their constructed reality. The first way you irritate the ego in others is simply through your presence, through what I call energetic non-participation. When you're awake, you're no longer seeking validation from external sources. You're not looking for approval or agreement or confirmation that you're okay. You've found something within yourself that makes you fundamentally complete, fundamentally at peace with your own existence. And this is absolutely threatening to the ego-driven person, because their entire sense of self depends on constant external validation. Think about it. When someone meets a person who genuinely doesn't need anything from them, no approval, no validation, no agreement, no admiration, it creates a kind of psychological vertigo. The ego doesn't know how to relate to this. It's accustomed to relationship based on mutual need, on trade, on transaction. I'll make you feel good about yourself if you make me feel good about myself. But you've stepped out of that economy entirely. You're not offering yourself as a mirror for their ego, and you're not asking them to be a mirror for yours. This creates what I call an irritation of absence. They're reaching for something from you that you're no longer providing, and they can't quite figure out why they feel so unsettled around. I remember a woman I knew who went through a profound awakening after years of seeking. She didn't change her external life dramatically. She kept the same job, the same friend, the same routine, but something fundamental had shifted inside her. She had stopped needing other people to tell her she was okay. And you know what happened? Her oldest friend began to drift away. Not with anger or drama, but with vague complaint. They'd say things like, "You've changed, you're not as fun anymore, you seem distant." But what had really changed? She had simply stopped playing the role they needed her to play. She had stopped pretending to need what they need. She had stopped participating in the endless cycle of ego validation. And her absence from that cycle felt to them like abandonment, like rejection, like judgment, even though she had done nothing but become more authentically herself. The second way you irritate the ego is through your refusal to engage in unconscious drama. The ego feeds on drama the way fire feeds on oxygen. It needs conflict, tension, stories of victimhood and villainy, righteous anger and justified resentment. It needs to be right and make others wrong. It needs enemies and allies, heroes and villains. This is how the ego maintains its sense of identity and importance. But when you wake up, you see through this game complete. You recognize that most human conflict is just ego against ego, shadow boxing with shadow. You see that the person who's angry at you is actually angry at something within themselves. You understand that the colleague who's gossiping is revealing their own insecurity, not actual truth about the person they're discussing. You perceive that the family member who's trying to start an argument is really crying out for love and connection, but doesn't know how to ask for it direct. And so you don't take the bait. You don't engage. You don't feed the drama. You remain calm, centered, present, but you simply won't participate in the unconscious patterns that everyone else is acting out. And this is absolutely infuriating to the ego, because the ego needs reaction. It needs you to fight back, to defend yourself, to get upset, to engage. When you don't, when you simply observe with compassion but without participation, the ego feels unseen, invalidated, powerless. And an invalidated ego becomes a hostile ego. I once witnessed a family gathering where one member, let's call him David, had done considerable inner work. His brother tried repeatedly to provoke him with old patterns, bringing up past grievances, making subtle digs about David's life choice, attempting to pull him into their familiar dynamic of sibling rivalry and resentment. But David simply didn't engage. He listened with genuine compassion, responded with kindness, but refused to defend himself or attack back. He wouldn't take the bait, and his brother became increasingly agitated, increasingly desperate, eventually exploding in anger and accusing David of thinking he was better than everyone else, of being cold and superior. But David hadn't done anything except refuse to play the old game. His mere presence, his peaceful non-engagement, had held up a mirror to his brother's ego, and the ego didn't like what it saw. The third way you irritate the ego in others is through your authenticity, and this might be the most threatening of all. When you wake up, you stop performing, you stop pretending, you stop wearing the masks that society demands. You become authentic, which means you become real, raw, genuine, without the carefully constructed facade that most people hide behind. And this authenticity is like holding up a mirror to everyone around you, showing them by contrast just how much they're pretending, just how much they're performing, just how much energy they're spending maintaining an image that isn't real. The ego has invested tremendous energy in creating a particular image, a particular story about who this person is. I'm the successful one. I'm the victim. I'm the helper. I'm the rebel. I'm the good person. Whatever the story is, the ego clings to it desperately, because without it, it fears it will cease to exist. But your authenticity threatens this story. Your willingness to be vulnerable threatens their need to appear strong. Your honesty about your struggles threatens their pretense of having it all together. Your comfort with not knowing threatens their need to appear certain. Your presence reminds them unconsciously that they're living a lie, and nothing irritates the ego more than being reminded of its own inauthenticity. Think about what happens when someone in a group admits genuine vulnerability, real weakness, authentic struggle. If everyone else in that group is operating from ego, from performance, from pretense, what happens? They become uncomfortable. They change the subject. They offer quick fixes or hollow reassurance. They dismiss the vulnerability or make a joke to relieve the tension, because authentic vulnerability in one person triggers deep discomfort in everyone else's ego, reminding them of all the vulnerability they're suppressing, all the authenticity they're hiding, all the pretending they're doing. Your willingness to be real becomes an unspoken accusation against their commitment to being fake, even though you've accused them of nothing at all. And here's the fourth way you irritate the ego, and this one is particularly subtle: through your peace itself. The ego believes that peace comes from external circumstances, from getting what you want, from having things work out your way, from controlling outcomes and manipulating situations. The ego is constantly agitated, constantly worried, constantly strategizing and planning and defending and attacking, because it believes this is what survival requires. But when you wake up, you discover a peace that exists independent of circumstance. You find a stillness that doesn't depend on external validation or perfect condition. You access a contentment that can exist even in the midst of challenge and uncertainty. And this peace, this unexplainable calm, is absolutely maddening to the ego-identified person, because it contradicts everything the ego believes about how life works. The ego looks at you and thinks, how can you be at peace when you don't have everything figured out? How can you be content when circumstances aren't perfect? How can you be calm when there's so much to worry about? Your peace suggests that everything the ego has been doing, all that worry and control and manipulation, might be unnecessary. And this threatens the ego's entire operating system, its entire reason for existing. I knew a man who had achieved what most would consider remarkable success, wealth, status, recognition, achievement in his field. But he was constantly anxious, constantly worried about losing what he had, constantly comparing himself to others, constantly strategizing his next move. And he met someone who had very little by conventional standard, modest means, simple life, no particular status. But this person radiated a peace and contentment that was undeniable. And instead of inspiring the successful man, instead of making him curious or open, this person's peace irritated him profoundly. He would make subtle comment about how easy it must be to be content when you have no ambition, when you're not really trying to achieve anything significant. He found ways to diminish and dismiss this person's peace because it threatened everything his ego had convinced him was necessary for happiness. The peaceful person's very existence was an accusation against the ego's entire belief system. The fifth way you irritate the ego is through your non-judgment, your acceptance, your refusal to divide the world into good and bad, right and wrong, us and them. The ego loves judgment. It needs judgment to maintain its sense of superiority and separation. The ego constantly evaluates and categorizes and condemns and approves, because this is how it knows where it stands, how it maintains its identity as separate and special and right. But when you wake up, you begin to see the fundamental unity beneath all the apparent difference. You recognize that what you judge in others exists in yourself. You understand that everyone is doing the best they can with the level of consciousness they currently have. You see that condemnation is just another form of unconsciousness. And so you stop judging, not because you're trying to be spiritual or good, but because judgment simply falls away when you see clearly. You can observe, you can discern, you can have preferences and boundaries, but the harsh judgment, the righteous condemnation, the need to make others wrong so you can be right, all of that dissolves. And this non-judgment is absolutely irritating to the ego, because the ego wants you to join in its judgment, to validate its condemnation, to agree that certain people are bad and wrong and worthy of rejection. When you won't do this, when you simply remain open and accepting without agreeing with the ego's need to condemn, the ego feels threatened, betrayed, confused. It doesn't understand how you can see clearly without judging harshly. It mistakes your acceptance for weakness or naivety or spiritual bypassing. But here's where we need to understand something crucial, something that changes everything. The irritation you're causing isn't actually about you. It's never about you. It's about what your presence triggers in them. You are not doing anything to them. You are simply being yourself, your authentic, awake self. And that authentic present acts like a mirror, reflecting back to them everything they're avoiding, everything they're suppressing, everything they're pretending not to see about themselves. This is what I call the mirror effect. The more awake you become, the more clearly you reflect reality back to others. And most people do not want to see reality. They want to see their carefully constructed story. They want to see their comfortable illusions confirmed. They want to believe their ego's version of events. When you show up as a clear mirror, simply by being present and authentic and awake, you disrupt all of that. And they don't thank you for it. They attack the mirror. Now, you might be wondering, is there any hope here? Does this mean that awakening necessarily leads to loneliness and rejection and constant friction? connection with others. And here's what I want you to understand. The irritation you cause is temporary. It's part of a process. Some people will move away from you permanently, and that's perfectly fine, even necessary. They were never really with you anyway. They were with the version of you that was still asleep. The version that played their games and validated their ego and participated in their unconsciousness. But other people, the ones who are ready, the ones who are beginning to stir in their own sleep, they will be drawn to you precisely because of what irritates others. Your peace will inspire them. Your authenticity will give them permission. Your non-judgment will help them feel safe. Your presence will create space for their own awakening. You see, the same qualities that irritate the deeply unconscious will attract the nearly awake. It's a kind of natural sorting that happens, not because you're trying to sort people or judge them or exclude anyone, but simply because consciousness recognizes consciousness and unconsciousness rejects it. And here's the paradox. The less you try to be liked, the less you try to manage other people's reactions to you, the less you try to dim your light to make others comfortable, the more genuine connection you'll actually experience. Not with everyone, certainly not with the ego-identified masses, but with the few, the authentic one, the real one, the ones who are tired of pretending and ready for something true. These people will find, or you'll find them, and the connection will be entirely different from anything you've experienced before. It won't be based on mutual ego validation. It will be based on mutual recognition of consciousness, on shared authenticity, on the relief of finally being able to drop all pretense and simply be real with another human being. So, what do you do with all of this? How do you navigate a world where your very presence irritates so many people's ego? First, you must absolutely understand that their reaction is not your responsibility. You are not required to dim your light to make others comfortable with their dark. You are not obligated to go back to sleep so others don't feel bad about their own unconsciousness. You are not responsible for managing their ego's discomfort with your awakening. This is crucial because many awakening people fall into the trap of thinking they need to make themselves smaller, less authentic, more palatable to avoid triggering others. But this is just another form of ego, another form of trying to control outcome, another form of people-pleasing. True awakening includes the courage to be yourself regardless of how others react. Second, you must develop what I call compassionate detachment. You can see that their irritation is about their own pain, their own fear, their own resistance to truth. And you can have compassion for that without taking it personally, without making it about you, without trying to fix it or defend yourself against it. You simply observe, you understand, and you remain centered in your own truth. This doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent. It means you become strong enough to allow others to have their reaction without being pulled off your center by those reactions. Third, you must trust the process of natural selection that's happening. The right people will stay or arrive. The wrong people will leave. This is not a tragedy. This is life doing exactly what it needs to do. Let the sorting happen. Don't fight it. Don't try to hold on to relationships that are based on who you used to be. Allow yourself to be found by those who can recognize who you actually are. And finally, you must remember something absolutely essential. You did not wake up to make others comfortable. You woke up to be free, to be real, to live from truth rather than from fear and pretense and ego. And that freedom, that authenticity, that truth, these are worth more than universal approval, worth more than being liked by everyone, worth more than avoiding the irritation of unconscious ego. You are not here to please the world. You are here to be awakening. And if that awakeness irritates some ego, so be it. Let them be irritated. Their irritation is their opportunity to wake up if they choose to take it. And your peace, your authenticity, your refusal to go back to sleep, these are your gifts to yourself and to anyone ready to receive. So stand in your truth, my friend. Be authentically, unapologetically awake. Let the egos rage and retreat and reject if they must. You are not here for them. You are here for consciousness itself, here to embody, here to express it, here to live it, regardless of who finds that irritating. And in that commitment to truth over comfort, to authenticity over approval, you will find a freedom and a peace that no ego's irritation can ever touch. That is the real gift of awakening. Not that everyone will love you, but that that you will finally, fully, completely love and accept yourself.